Our humanitarian partners and local residents have confirmed that airstrikes bombarded the Al-Mazraq area of Hajj Governorate in Yemen yesterday morning, hitting a camp for internally displaced persons and surrounding civilian infrastructure. According to initial reports from the World Health Organization, these strikes killed at least 29 people and injured 41, all of whom appear to be civilians. Of the 41 people injured, 14 are children and 11 are women. Casualty figures are likely to rise as bodies are retrieved from the camp and additional injury reports are verified. The UN humanitarian coordinator in Yemen deplored yesterday's attack in the strongest terms and called on all parties to observe their solemn obligations under international humanitarian law and international human rights law at all times. And UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Zaid Rad al Hussein expressed alarm about the fast deteriorating human rights situation in Yemen and called on all sides to protect civilians from harm and to resolve their differences through dialogue rather through the use of military force. He expressed shock at the airstrike against the Al-Mazraq camp for internally displaced people and also roundly condemned all attacks on hospitals and other medical facilities, which have a special protected status under international law. Regarding talks in Yemen, Jamal bin Umar is continuing with his efforts. We, of course, are urging all sides to return to the negotiating table. At this stage, as you know, there's been a lot going on the ground in terms of military activity, and the Secretary General, as you saw in his appearance at the summit of the League of Arab States a few days ago, made very clear that there ultimately needs to be a negotiated solution, and we will continue to press for that, and Mr. bin Umar is going to continue with his efforts.
Concerning the attack on the camp in Yemen, the refugee camp, and tens of people lost their lives, the foreign minister of Yemen, Riyad Yassin, has appeared in our station and saying that the forces of Ali Abdullah Saleh are responsible for bombardment of that camp. Now, does the United Nations have any real proof who are the perpetrators of the bombing of that camp?
At this stage, our work in this continues. We have not identified who is responsible for this attack. Whoever is responsible, this is a violation of international humanitarian and human rights law. This camp, as well as the hospitals that have also been hit, are under protected status and should not be hit. So whichever forces are hitting them are in violation of the law. There should be accountability for that, and ultimately, all such attacks have to cease. Yes.
Sure.
Hold on, please. I'll get to you next. Yes.
Sure. On Yemen, a follow-up on that, and a different question on Yemen. I've seen that. I mean, the UN statements have called it an airstrike. So I just want you to confirm from here that the UN system knows that this was a strike from an airplane on that refugee camp.
This is the best available information that we have, and as you've seen, a variety of sources: the World Health Organization, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights have all described it that way.
And also in Yemen, both the International Committee of the Red Cross and MSF have today complained that they can't get any medical supplies into the country due to the closure of airports, and it's also said that the ports are blockaded. What is the UN system doing to ensure that there is access to much-needed medical supplies, as it's called for elsewhere?
We are pushing for this, and we do urge all forces in control of border crossings, of ports, and of airports to make sure that aid can come in and go, and that people can go out. What's needed is regular travel, and it has to be safe.
So who in the UN system has spoken with the Saudi-led coalition about the blockading of ports?
We have been in touch in a number of ways, at a number of levels, including, by the way, in order to get our own personnel out. We've been trying for different windows. We're aware that there's a conflict on the ground, but we've been in touch with the various parties to make sure that there are windows of time when flights can go in and out.
Right, but if there's an intentional blockading of ports, is there any provision made to allow in either aid or medical supplies? And who is asking for that from the UN system?
We are seeking access, and we'll continue to push for that. Yes.
Yeah, one of the reasons populated areas, densely populated areas, are bombarded by the Saudis and their allies, is that so they are citing that the Houthis and the Yemeni army are putting anti-aircraft guns in these areas. Is that a justification to bombard such areas?
I've said what I said about different areas being protected under international human rights and humanitarian laws. What that means is both that they should not be struck and that parties should not use them for military activity. Neither thing should happen.
But of course, sorry, here, follow up. Anti-aircraft are defensive weapons. They are not attack weapons. They are not like missiles or anything. So they are meant to protect the areas.
The point of international humanitarian and human rights law is that certain areas are meant for the protection of innocent people and should be off limits by either side for whatever purpose.
I have two questions, one on Yemen and one on ICC. On Yemen, is there still no official statement by the Secretary on the military operation, a policy statement? That's one. And if not, did the 10 countries started this operation inform officially the Security Council before they start the military operation according to the UN Charter? If it's not a self-defense, they're supposed to inform the Security Council. Did they do that?
First of all, regarding the Security Council, I don't speak for them, so you'd have to ask the President of the Security Council. Second of all, regarding your initial question, we did have a statement that was issued at the start of these operations a few days ago. So you look back to our statement on Yemen, I think it was last Thursday or Friday we put that out.
Now,
Yes, Nisar.
I have two questions, one on Idlib and the other on Yemen. On Idlib, it seems that Jabhat al-Nusra, which is categorized as a terrorist organization, took control of the city. And they came with a coalition of similar armed groups. How does the United Nations deal with that when a terrorist group takes over a city? And what are the plans to help the civilians there? Another thing is regarding Yemen. Sana'a airport has been bombarded. The Saudis prevented an aircraft carrying medical supplies to land. They did not give the permission for them to land. Not only that, they bombarded the runway itself so that they cannot do it. How are you dealing with such a situation?
As I said before on Yemen, we're trying to push for access so that that humanitarian supplies can get into the country, and we would call on all sides to allow that to happen. Regarding your first question on Idlib, at the start of this briefing, I discussed the problems in Idlib and mentioned what our humanitarian coordinator there, Yaqub El-Hilo, has said. And there's a full press release available, which also includes the work we're trying to do to provide assistance to people displaced from the fighting there.
But that doesn't answer the question regarding how do you feel that Jabhat al-Nusra is controlling the city? That's the main thing.
I've told you what we had to say about the seizure of Idlib, and again I can say that we're gravely concerned by the fighting and its possible impact on hundreds of thousands of civilians, and we appeal to all parties to adhere to their obligations to protect civilians and all humanitarian personnel.
Yemen, I wanted to know, you were saying how the UN diplomacy is what Mr. Ben Omar is pitching. So I just wanted to know, can you say, did Mr. Ben Omar caution Saudi Arabia against this airstrike campaign? And since they've said publicly that one of their demands now is that the Houthis, leave all cities essentially, which many people see as unrealistic, does he believe that that's even if with the campaign having begun, that's a reasonable goalpost to set to ending it?
I'm not going to disclose his own views on this while he's trying to get the parties together. I think it's important that he have the ability to talk to all parties and to do what he can to bring them together. You've heard from us the concerns that he's expressed in the past, and I would just refer you to his own recent remarks, his press releases, his briefings to the Security Council, where he talked about his own concerns about how the situation can escalate. And as you can see, it has in fact escalated. So he is trying to reverse that dynamic, and we'll leave him to that.
But I mean, it's basically it seems like President Hadi is out of the country and he's applauding these airstrikes. It's essentially raising his negotiating power. And what I wonder is, is this seen by the UN system or by Mr. Ben Omar as a kind of a legitimate way to change the negotiating leverage, or is there a call to end airstrikes of the kind that we've seen?
We have made our own concerns known about this offensive. And I would just again refer you to what the Secretary General has been saying in recent days. He has spoken out about this, and I'd refer you to his past comments. Ali, and then
just a follow up, Farhan. Thank you. Do you have any indications that a ground assault is going to be to follow the airstrikes in Yemen? Thank you.
We're aware of the various reports. Of course, we would be concerned about any further escalation of this conflict. Yes.
Farhan, how does the United Nations feel about the smear campaign waged by the Qataris and the Saudis against bin Omar at this stage for the last few days? They've been attacking him and discrediting him in many ways for his lack of support to the aerial campaign so far.
All I'd say is that the Secretary General has the full support for his special advisor, Mr. bin Omar, and he continues to hope that that the parties will cooperate with him and allow him to go about his work.
Wouldn't such attacks on bin Omar undermine his role as a mediator and as accepted envoy?
Like I said, the Secretary General fully supports his special advisor, and we certainly hope that the parties will all work with him. Yes.
Yeah, Farhan, when the Al-Nusra invaded Idlib recently, did you get any reports on massacres perpetrated against minorities inside it? Because, of course, there were some fled the city, however, others remained. And are there any independent reports about what kind of atrocities perpetrated there?
Well, I've told you what we have to say about the situation in Idlib. We'll continue to try and get information from the people who have been displaced from there, and if we get such reports, of course we would view them with concern. As it is, we're concerned about the impact that the takeover of Idlib could have on the civilians in and around that area.
Another one on Gulf of Aden. There are several fleets now there operating in the region. How concerned are you that there could be any clashes between two sides like Iranian, Egyptian, Saudis in that area?
I don't think I'd take on any hypothetical questions about this at this stage.